Da da da! What's my good chair? Welcome, everybody. Let's give YouTube a couple of minutes to get those notifications out. And in the meantime, if you've never met me before, hi, I'm Cindy. I explore the inside and the outside. And I'm just coming upstairs. I have sold a teapot of all things for $80. It was a good little sale, and I appreciate, being able to be creative in how I put a roof over my head and, to be able to work for myself, like not to have to depend on others in the moment to, right? Pay the bills, to have to answer to other people's demands, sometimes unreasonable, sometimes just not out of consideration of just saying, oh, do you think, or would you mind? It was just like, do this, do this, do this, and not have that appreciation afterwards for the contribution, right? It's something I always appreciated about those jobs that I had for a long time was the consideration of management, the acknowledgement of management of the work, of what I brought to the table, the extra money, the customer service, the good reviews. And even at this last job that I had, I might not have rubbed everybody properly, when it came to management. But those higher ups, those people at the head office, the area managers, they were so lovely and they were so considerate. And at the same time, I get it. We have to keep the morale up, and success isn't um, regulated in a way that it increases when there's negativity in that presence, right? Negativity only brings about more negativity, right? It's kind of like that phrase, Debbie Downers. Who wants to be around a Debbie Downer? Not too many. But sometimes, if you have a good heart, if you can tolerate a little bit of uncomfortable, right? If you can tolerate a little bit of lack of consideration or appreciation and understand that, even if they don't get it, even if they don't appreciate it, that you just being around lightens it up, right? Takes a load off of them. You hear that phrase lots of times that, not everybody will understand your kindnesses. Not everybody will understand your intent or your heart, right? Lots of times it won't be appreciated, but you can feel good about yourself, right? Knowing that you did your best, and I've always put my best foot forward, even though it didn't always work out for me. Hello, Eugene. Even though it didn't work out for me, I always put my best foot forward because, I need that for myself in my own understanding of, right, I did okay. And I did okay today. I would have to say it was a beautiful teapot. It was a Lixing Japanese um, um, blossom tree, clay, heavy. It was at least 10 pounds. He said it looked like it was carved out of rock. For myself, I just think it was probably a clay concrete mixture. It didn't look vintage to me because it was in very nice shape. In fact, it was very beautiful. I'll actually just find a picture here of it because, I got $80 for it. I was pretty proud of myself in that. And not only that, within 5 minutes, I got contacted by the person who bought it, and he rushed over here right away. He had his flashlight, and he gave it an inspection for like, oh, at least 20 minutes before he tried to haggle me down a little bit. And that's the worst part about being a reseller. You know, I find the haggling a little bit difficult for myself. You know, I have to be attentive to the idea that it does agitate me when that happens. And so I got to be pleasant. I have to be a little bit extra kinder because in the moment I just want to, right? What do you mean? That's a great deal. I'm not going any lower. And then you get all defensive and upset about it. And you can lose a sale that way. You only tried to bring the price down $20. But in this business, I am partnering up with my sister. And plus, once you deduct the cost of it, then you split the profits. It's not very much. So, as my part of the job is to try to get as much money as I possibly can. And when I sold it so fast, it made me a little bit nervous that I didn't price it a little bit higher. And that was, I'd never seen anything like it. It was so pretty. I'd never seen anything like it. Let me show you this teapot. And it's a teapot, you guys. Let's see if I can get a good angle. Can you see it good? It was so magnificent and super heavy. And yeah, it's gone. My sister had that one up on eBay for quite a while and right, no hits on it. And that one would have been very, very expensive. Like I said, it weighed 10 pounds. It would have been very, very expensive to ship. Okay, I haven't had a bit of a relaxing moment. I've been listing. As soon as I was listing, I was selling it. So I've been in the process of communications and right getting ready for my live show, which was pretty much nothing. Just putting on a sweater so you couldn't see what I was wearing. Oh yeah, I put on a cozy one. You guys, it is again a minus 45 Celsius with the wind chill kind of day. And tomorrow it's going to be even colder. So we're on day 3. This cold spell is likely to last 5 or 6 days, at least here in Manitoba. I hear Ontario is the process, and especially like the eastern part of the province is getting hit, and tomorrow they should find themselves in those cold temperatures, not like here in Manitoba. It's freezing here. It's not going to melt. It's going to melt in Ontario. They have fairly nice winters in Ontario. We've had very nice winters here also in the past few years. So I'm not grumbling and complaining that it's super cold. I went out yesterday for a quick one and got a few groceries to tie me over for a few days. And, you know, I've got things to do here. I've got things to list and things to clean. I did manage to get some laundry done today in between of what I was doing. So just getting a little bit ahead of the game and ahead of the game. That's a story for another day. I've decided. I was inspired today, and oh my goodness, I've got like five pages of written notes, not doodles, right? Like pages and pages of insights, because I felt compelled to make a video. You know, I prefer to do my live shows, come in here, just be myself, right? See who shows up. Hello, Hannah. Hi, Cindy. I'm glad you had a good day. Oh, thank you. Eugene said, I just want to say hello to you, and I'm going to watch Paul the Rail Avenue YouTube now. Oh, that was nice of Eugene to do that. I hope Eugene has an amazing night. Very considerate that he popped in and he always does. But Hannah, 2 days in a row I've had you. How was your day going today? Let me know. It was a good day for you too. It was a productive day. It was a heavy day, in the topics that I was in. And like I said, I thought I would do a sit down video and get a topic of discussion off of my chest. And I thought I would put it out there. And then, in the things that come across my path, that idea changed. I thought, oh, maybe it's too heavy in this moment. It's too insightful. People might not get it, and it might be too soon. So I decided that I would do it still, but just do it and leave it unlisted and just leave it so that, YouTube and Google would have the access to it and permission if somewhere's down the road, whether it's 10 years, 100 years, 1,000 years, 100,000 years, that someone or something might come across it and it might be significantly relevant. And I haven't done it yet because again I was running around doing this stuff, but I do have my notes. I do feel that it's very, very, very important. It's a known topic, but I don't think it's a topic that lots of people are truly experienced in. And not to say that, right, I'm super experienced in it, but it's a topic that came across my path very, very early that gave me some very important insights that I didn't delve in again, because again, sometimes we get that information too soon, that in the moment it's not relevant. And that's how it was. That's how it was for me. Cold here, but a terrific day. Thank you all. That's good. Can I ask where you are, where it's cold here, Hannah? Right? To see where else in the world it is a winter day. And like I said, it's been a few years, and I'm not going to grumble. Right? It's appreciating that we're not going into that global warming too hard and too fast at the moment. Right? So that's a good sign. I think it's a good sign. I heard that there was 5 meters of snow this week in Russia. 5 meters, 25 in 1 hour. They said that snow fell in 1 hour. Like when I saw the pictures, the snow drifts went all the way up to the third floor of some apartment buildings. It was kind of nutso. And yeah, at first I thought it was just kind of what do you call those, like scam videos, like AI. AI is so heavy into the AI creation in the posts, and it's really difficult to distinguish as to what's real and what's been generated. And right, we're moving into a world where we're going to have to feel these things out, right? Feel it with our ears and our all our senses, maybe not our noses. They haven't invented smell-o-vision yet. But, this is the practice, right? To be able to distinguish between impactful, real. It can be impactful AI generated. It can, but we have to feel that out for ourselves, right? But for the most part, I'm a little bit frustrated when I get caught in that self. But I also understand, just how some people they say, "Oh, how's the weather today? Oh, it's a cloudy day." And then sometimes we think that's not relevant conversation, but sometimes people find it hard to get into a conversation. So they use the weather as an entry point into that conversation. So it's the same idea, I think, with the AI, because there are lots of amazing creators out there that are shy, right? They don't want to be in front of the camera. And this age of AI learning has offered up an opportunity for themselves to find a way to be in front of the camera and to be relevant without, you know, coming forward in a way that they can be judged or it's going to make them nervous. I know for myself as a teenager, I had the most nervous, right? Little twitches in my lips and in my eyelids all the time. I think sometimes that maybe I didn't get certain jobs because of that noticeability of my nervousness. But lots of times people would just look past that and they would actually ask me, What's that?" Right? Thinking maybe I might have Tourette's or some kind of ailment. And I would just say, "Oh, I'm just super nervous." I'm just super nervous. And people would find that acceptable, right? And sometimes I would get the job anyway. My first paycheck job. I've been working since I was 10 years old. I started off as a babysitter, and then I moved to foster care babysitter. So I worked in foster care, but as a babysitter for the foster care workers so that they could go off and have other jobs and have a little bit of a life for themselves. So I would go on Friday after school, and then I would come home Sunday night at dinner time, and I would make $100, right? And that job, I think I started that job about when I was 13, maybe 13 years. Yeah, I think about 13 years old I started that job. And I had that job probably for about 3 years, and I made $100 every weekend. Now this is in the 70s, you guys. $100 was a lot of money. But I had to stay in that foster home. And I remember that her husband was there. He was an invalid, right? He didn't move very well. He was probably 20 years older than she was. And she was fairly mature herself at the time. But he was pretty touchy, you know, with the babysitter. And I would have to set him straight every time he tried. But that $100, oh my goodness, right? It made it possible for me to have adventures and go to movies and buy clothes and, go to restaurants if I wanted, abundance in that way. I always worked for it, but I've always managed to be able, right, to have a few dollars. I might not have been a millionaire, right? But I also at that time I did, and this time I don't have that stress, and I am not frivolous, and I'm not demanding in my needs and in my desires unless it comes to September. And in September it's an all in. It's right, there is no, and I make the most magnificent time of it as I can. And every time when I get home from those trips, it usually takes me about a month to get back into to get back into financial shape, but I do it. And I have the most amazing, wonderful holidays every single year. And I'm kind of proud of myself that I'm able to create. Like, I even rent fancy vehicles, right? And oh my goodness, these luxury SUVs, they're pretty amazing, right? I wish one of them was mine. That day will come, right? And I'll be happy to show you guys my next amazing vehicle. I'm looking at the Wagoneer. Oh my goodness. Not only the Wagoneer, the Yukon is nice and the Denali is really nice, right? I love my SUVs. I am an SUV girl, but I like the seven seaters. I like the big bus ones, right? I love the expensive ones. And not because they're expensive. I love them because I love them. They just happen to be expensive, right? That would be pretty cool when I achieve that one. And I believe somewhere's down the line I will, right? I used to say, I'm going to look out my window and I'm just going to open up my window just a touch. The heat, oh my goodness, there's frost all over the windows, just a little bit, just to let some of that cool air come in. I wanted to keep it kind of light tonight. I recognize in the past few days that the topics have been a little bit hefty, right? Have been a little bit hefty. But I think, going in and taking the lessons from myself, right? For myself, that I don't think I got too off the mark in the past 3 days in those hefty topics that I talked about. And I came in and it wasn't my intent in that flow. But, right, I ride those waves. And, in the moment when it starts flowing, Cindy just kind of goes with it. Tonight, I said, well, tonight we'll just sit, we'll do our card, whatever pops up, we'll pick our powerful word and we'll still get into that topic. But I will not jibber jabber and keep everybody in the topic of my life, right? It is a privilege to be. I consider myself a vlogger, right? But also at the same time, I pass the lessons along. I pass that little bit of magic that comes into my life, those gifts that come across my path in the hopes that it might benefit somebody else, you know? And I am optimistic even if it doesn't happen tonight, doesn't happen this week, next year, next lifetime, that at some point down the road it might be relevant. Just like that video that right? I backed out on it because it is super heavy. And at the same time, if I go down that road, I would have to, right, carry on, right? You can't open up, um, well, what I was going to say, you can't open up a topic and then just kind of drop it, right? You have to be able to move with the same kind of steam. And, you start there, then it has to be just as relevant as you move forward. Now, being kind of loose and light tonight, right? It's kind of a little bit of diversity from what we've been doing in the past few days. But I think even in that, it's in that recognition that we shouldn't always be in those heavy topics, that we should be enjoying our lives. And there's a place to be heavy, there's a place to be light. And it's the same way in when the timing of it, because sometimes it's just the timing. Okay, right? We've been heavy for 3 days. Let's just keep it a little bit lighter tonight. And if tomorrow I feel compelled to get into it again, right, we will. I'll ride those waves. If it's called for, right? Tonight, it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like it's called for. So it is a day off at work day. That's what I call it. For I would assume most people in Winnipeg, especially in retail and hospitality, those employees and management, right, those team leaders, they had a day off at work day. I don't think anybody made much money except what they're doing online, because it's just so darn cold. Minus 45 Celsius. That's pretty cold. Take care, Hannah. I appreciate you coming in tonight. Mm, okay. Nice to sit down here for a minute. We got our cards. We're going to pick a card tonight. We're going to spend a couple of minutes. Tonight might be a short one, might not be, but it is what it is, and I'm okay with that, and I'm sure everybody else is okay, right? Might be that special night where it's your favorite television show, right? But you're considerate enough to spend a little bit of time with me. And in that consideration and reciprocation, right? We do the best that we can in that. We keep company for each other. We shine on each other, right? Hannah left and Eugene left for the evening, right? And that's absolutely amazing. And they've been with me all week too. Eugene, oh my goodness, he's been with me almost every single night for months and months now. And it's so appreciated. There are times when I come in and I'm just yibber yabbering to myself, and that's okay too, right? Like I said, there's a time and place for everything, and not every live show is relevant, right? Sometimes we just tie it into the moment in our life and we call it part of our life rather than part of that movement that we want to make, right? That accountability. And I try always to be accountable to myself at the very least, consistent in making sure that I always show up. Very rarely, right, do I miss the mark on that. Now, I'll be a few minutes late here and there, like I was tonight, and finishing up with that little sale that I made. But that's important too, right? It's been keeping the roof over my head, the bills paid, and it's keeping my sister happy too, because she's been very disillusioned with her eBay store, because she's having a hard time getting her items shipped off to the States because of the tariffs. They're just so high that nobody wants to buy from Canadians, right? And that is unfortunate, especially if your store is 80% its sales are from the Americans, right? But we've been doing pretty good here on marketplace, so I appreciate it. And I appreciate too that that they're not digging in for their cut. There may come a point once they recognize that all these eBay stores are coming onto their platform, it might be a little bit of a different story. But as of this moment, we are free to do what we do, and we pass those savings on to the customer too, right? When we have to add a little bit extra for the shipping, right? And also to take into consideration that PayPal takes a cut and eBay takes a cut, and so it is been very comfortable, and it keeps me busy too, and it keeps me with the entrepreneurs. I think Gary Vaynerchuk would be very proud of me. Okay, you guys, here we go. Let's just grab a card. We'll go into it for a couple of minutes, and then we're going to call it a night. Okay, here we go. Oh, here we go. Just grab one, Cindy. Oh, this is absolutely amazing. This is another card that I have not pulled before. I think this is the second card this week that I've never pulled before. The word we got today is grace. Grace swoops in to make the impossible possible. Grace. Now read that again. Grace swoops in to make the impossible possible. This is when we're at our lowest of the lowest. This is when we think that there's no hope left, that there's no sense of being able to accomplish what we want to do, that we don't know where the answer or that miracle lays. That's what grace is. It's when we almost at that verge of just giving up because we don't know how possible, how can it happen? How can we make this right? How could I ever survive this? How will I get better? Right? And that is when the miracles, right, for the most part, it is a gift. It is something that takes us, well, when you look at this word grace, you wouldn't think of the word wonder, but grace is so surprisingly, I was going to say rare, but it's not rare. It's all the time. Grace is happening all the time. These miracles, right? Selling that teapot when I did, being able to make a few sales after all that work that I put into listing all that stock and to see that success of it. And it's that evidence. And that's kind of what this is, grace, the evidence that there is something beyond, right? We sometimes think we're the be all to end all. It's not going to get done without us. It's impossible, right? And sometimes we get a rude awakening in that, in understanding that, oh my goodness, I just could not do it without the miracle of something that is so wondrous that it leaves my jaw down to this. You know, when we get this word wonder, right? That is the majesty of what we're experiencing, what we see, what we realize, right? Even with those really bad illnesses and you pray and pray and pray and they're saying there's no hope, and then all of a sudden they can't even find the disease. It's like it's never happened before. That's supposed to be the evidence for ourselves. That's that little bit of evidence that gives us the opportunity to hope and to believe. There isn't enough belief in this world. That is for certain. And maybe in that rarity, because we are not searching out that help, because we're the be all to end all. We are We can do it on our own. We don't need that help. And then we just crash in that, like literally crash. And we get to the point and you say, oh my goodness, how is this ever going to be resolved? Right? How can it happen? And then it just happens. And again, that wonder, like, but in that moment of that grace, we are so relieved, right? We become happy, we start celebrating, and we forget to be grateful in what's come across our path, right? This past September, I felt like it was grace. My sister was going into the hospital for a quadruple bypass. My other sister was seeing specialists. I had no money. I had no vehicle. Then, right, my sister only ended up having a triple bypass. She got her surgery in before I had to go on my trip, because you guys know I go on my trip on in September, right? And she had her operation in the end of August or the beginning of September, and it was so successful that she was just like, she's the best post-op patient ever. But sometimes she's one of those people, I can do it by myself. And that grace has to teach us and her that lesson of what miracles are really about, right? To show the evidence. And in showing her the evidence, that took the relief and the guilt and the shame, right? Because I can't go away when my sister is about to have a serious operation that she might not make it through. And yet she did. And, right, she was well on her way to getting better when right, I found that possibly my other sister had decided that she was going to Disneyland with her daughter and granddaughter, and she was going to let me take her car. And she gave me a good deal on that vehicle. And not only that, right? I probably paid about the same amount as if I was going to rent it, right? But at the same time, she had somebody to watch over her car. I gave her $600, and she was able, because the engine light came on the vehicle, brand new vehicle, engine light came on, and she had to get an expensive repair done on that vehicle. So it contributed to helping her get her vehicle paid and not killing her in the bank account. It was still expensive, even though I gave her 600. I think she had to dish out another $1,400 for those repairs. But another miracle being, I had a perfectly good car, right? Comfortable car, a car that actually in the end had to keep the roof over my head, right? Because my tent broke on my trip. And I was able to keep the car for an extra day and have a extra day of a provincial park that it was just beautiful, that I got to, in the end, have the vacation that I didn't think. I had resigned myself to the fact that I wasn't going to be able to take my September trip this year. And yet, I have to say, it was the best trip yet. Of all the years that I've been doing this, it was the best one yet, right? And it was just a little chain of miracles, a little chain, right? Of things that felt impossible, but in the end were made possible. And that's why it's so important to have trust and faith and belief that things can work out for us, right? And I've always, my whole life, have been an optimist, right? I don't know how I managed it. I attribute it to just loving life, right? And possibly not being disappointed in my limitations, that I had got to the point where I was able to accept my limitations and not beat myself up about that, that it allowed me to be exuberant and optimistic in the things that did come across my path, those relationships that were so impactful and so beautiful and so welcomed into my life at times when things might have been a little bit heavier. And even if they were heavier, I was still managing to find, right, the best of times in the worst of times, right? Grace. Grace swoops in to make the impossible possible. You guys, that's my good cheer. We'll see you tomorrow. Nice little short one. You guys have a great